A cop walks out of a sting operation he just ran. On the way to his car, he spots a latecomer. One more man he could arrest, standing there holding his young son's hand. The cop flashes his badge. The man nods and hurries the boy away. 2 seconds. That is the scene Blake Snyder said Hollywood had stopped writing. Snyder was not a professor. He was a spec screenwriter, a man who wrote movies nobody had ordered and then tried to sell them cold, off the page, to strangers with checkbooks. And he was good at it. Bidding wars. $1 million sales. Notes from Spielberg. He still could not answer the only question that mattered about his own work. Everyone knows the feeling of a movie losing you somewhere in the middle. Almost nobody, including the people who made it, can tell you which page it happened on. Snyder spent 20 years hunting for that page. Here is the man before he found anything. He is standing in a coffee shop on Sunset Plaza, scanning a room of starlets and Eurotrash snobs for what he calls the person who seems least likely to hit him. Then he walks over and asks a total stranger for 2 minutes, because he wants to test a movie idea. He watches their eyes the whole time. When the eyes drift, he knows he has lost them, and he goes home and fixes the part that lost them. No ego at all about the work, and no idea how it worked. But in a real meeting, pitching a real executive, this is what happened. He'd give them the concept, a couple of great scenes, and then, his words, simply stopped and smiled, because I had nowhere else to go. His setups clogged with detail. His third acts were 2 index cards, always the same 2. The hero figures out what to do now, and the showdown. He had no middle. He had never had a middle. And nobody was going to tell him, because they were already paying him. Then he got hired. Real studio, real money. And in the meeting, the executive leaned across and asked him a friendly, ordinary, professional question. What's your act break? Snyder wrote it down years later exactly as it landed. I had exactly 0 idea of what this nice person was talking about. He was a paid screenwriter who did not know the word for the place where a movie turns. Everybody else in that room assumed he knew it. And right there, the question stopped being, how do I sell another one of these, and became something much worse. Is there a shape to this thing? And is everyone looking at it except me? So he read the books. Sid Field gave him 3 acts, and he called it career-saving. But 3 acts is 2 walls and 100 pages of open water in between. Like a swimmer in a vast ocean, his words. I needed more islands, shorter swims. Where are the islands? Nobody answered that. A broken cassette did. He was dead flat broke, driving between Santa Barbara and Los Angeles for meetings, and to make the drive useful, he taped movies onto bargain tapes, the cheap kind, 45 minutes aside. That drive happens to be split almost exactly in half by a mountain pass. Every trip, at the top of the hill, side A ran out. One night he taped an old comedy called What's Up, Doc? The next day he crested the hill, the tape clicked over, and the first half of the movie ended on the same beat. Exactly halfway. To the minute. Nobody had told him movies did that. Snyder had a name for how you feed an audience something boring they need to know. The Pope in the Pool. A script his mentor once read put its explain everything scene in the Vatican swimming pool. The Pope doing laps in a bathing suit while the plot gets laid out behind him. Nobody hears a word of it, because everybody is thinking, the Vatican has a pool? So, the Vatican has a pool. A spec script is a movie nobody ordered, written on the writer's own dime. Nothing gets it read but 1 line of description, and that line has to be ironic, has to show you the whole picture, has to tell a buyer who it's for and what it costs, and has to arrive with a title that says what it is. 4 things. 1 sentence. Before page 1. Therefore Snyder stopped waiting for anybody to hand him the map, and drew one. 15 beats. 1 page. Every beat with a page number bolted to it, so a script could be checked the way an inspector checks a wall. Not for whether it's beautiful, but for whether it's holding anything up. He typed it flush left so it fit on a single sheet. But the page was only half of it. Which brings in the other man in this story, and he is not famous. Mike Cheda ran development at Barry and Enright, at HBO, at Disney. He is the man credited with cracking the story on a Patrick Swayze picture called Next of Kin, and one afternoon he walked Snyder to the exact square of Century City sidewalk where he'd done it, pacing, sick with all the wrong answers, until it came. It just hit me. Cowboys and Indians. Years later, Snyder ran into him and asked what he was working on. Cheda pulled an artist's sketchbook out of a satchel and opened it flat across both pages. 3 ruled lines making 4 rows. Little cut squares of paper laid inside them. It's portable, Cheda cackled. Ah, Snyder said. The board. Remember the board. There are 2 symbols on it that matter more than anything else here, and we are not ready for them yet. Here is the page, 15 lines. Opening image, page 1. Theme stated, page 5, where somebody, usually not the hero, says the thing the whole movie is going to argue about, and the hero doesn't get it yet. Setup, pages 1 to 10. You meet everyone, and you plant what Snyder called the 6 things that need fixing. A list of small, broken things in the hero's life, laid in like time bombs, every one of which gets detonated later. Catalyst, page 12. The telegram. The phone call. The fiancé across the restaurant table announcing he is dumping you. Debate, 12 to 25, where the hero says this is crazy. Break into 2, page 25. B-story, page 30. Fun and games, 30 to 55. The part that's on the poster, the reason you bought the ticket. Midpoint, 55. A false victory or a false collapse. Bad guys close in. All is lost, 75. Dark night of the soul. Break into 3, 85. Finale. Final image. Now watch what those numbers do to the man who wrote them. Snyder loved The Catalyst. Loved it, and then admitted, in print, that in his own scripts my Catalyst moment will float around for the first couple of drafts. The setup will be too long, the story is clogged with details, and that page 12 Catalyst beat is somehow, mysteriously, on page 20. He is not describing anybody else. He is describing himself, every time. And the instruction he gives himself is 4 words long. Page 12. Catalyst. Do it. Because if it isn't there, he says, the reader gets antsy, and the coverage comes back with 2 words on it. No plot. Same with 25, where the hero has to choose to go. Not get lured, not get dragged, choose. I have been in many arguments, he writes. Why not page 28? What's wrong with 30? Don't, please. And on page 75, in the All is Lost beat, he noticed something nobody had ever pointed out to him. Somebody dies. Obi-Wan dies. The mentor goes, so the student can find out he had it in him all along. So if your story has no mentor, kill something anyway. Stick in something, anything that involves a death. It works every time. A flower in a pot? A goldfish? News that a beloved aunt has passed. He was in a theater watching Elf, Will Ferrell, Santa's Workshop, a Christmas comedy, when Ferrell stopped on a bridge and looked down at the water at exactly the right minute. Snyder nearly shouted at the screen. And it worked. In 1992, Snyder and his partner Jim Hagen had a spec called Nuclear Family ready to go out. They did not just send it. They went to an army surplus store, and they built by hand 20 radioactive script containment units. 20 of them, each designed to look like something you should not open indoors, so convincingly that Snyder had to phone ahead to the security gate at every studio in town so nobody called in a bomb scare. Then his agent, Hilary Wayne, turned messengers loose across the city on a single morning. Before that day was over, Jeffrey Katzenberg at Disney and Steven Spielberg at Amblin had personally picked up the phone to bid. That is the peak. And it is a false one. Because the thing Snyder had actually built was never a way to sell screenplays. The page numbers were not instructions for writing a movie. They were a place to stand while you found the break in the one you already had. It was an X-ray. Which is a problem, because an X-ray works on you too. There is a stretch between the midpoint and the collapse where the opposition regroups and the hero's own team comes apart. Snyder named it Bad Guys Close In, and then wrote this. I've never had an easy time with Bad Guys Close In. It's the weakest part of Blank Check. Blank Check is his hit. He is telling you, in his own how-to book, where his own movie is broken. He and Sheldon Bull spent weeks, his phrase, a lot of painful think time, solving that same stretch in a teen comedy called Really Mean Girls. They got it. Then they found out Tina Fey was already writing Mean Girls. But the diagnoses kept coming, and they are brutal, and they are funny. There is the slow threat. Bad guys who close in at 1 inch per year, a volcano that's going to blow any minute now, cowboys who sit on their horses agreeing they really ought to go get those guys for 90 minutes. Snyder yells at the screen, "Watch out for that glacier!" Then he lands it hard. Danger must be present danger. There is the one about magic. An audience will accept exactly one impossible thing per movie. A radioactive spider bite and a chemical accident across town is 2, and the second one is where he always checked out of Spider-Man. And there is the one he could not apply to himself in time. He and Sheldon Bull wrote a comedy about a president stranded behind enemy lines. Funny premise, great title, and roughly 2 actors alive who could open it. Yes, someday it will get made, but right now it just sits there. Hear the crickets? Then 10 months of rewrites on another script. 7 drafts, because they had liked their young hero so much they'd made him kind and generous on page 1, which left him nowhere to go. We wanted to get there so badly we didn't see that getting there was the story. And through all of it, the same accusation. From writers who thought a map was a cage. Structure is a formula. Follow Snyder and you'll write the same movie forever. His answer years later is 3 words long. This objection exhausts me. But then the thing he was best at stopped existing. The spec sale, the whole game, the bidding war, the front page of Variety the next morning, died. The studios built a tracking system so they would never again get caught bidding blind on a script nobody had read. Too many purchases never got made. Nobody was going to open a homemade radioactive box again. And Hilary Wayne, the agent who built his career from nothing, who ran the Messengers that morning, who he said was the best he ever had died in 1998. Or I would still be working with her. He wrote about this part too. But not as a beat. I've also been faced with terrible self-doubt and self-recrimination. You get bumped in this business, and want to throw in the towel from time to time. 75 screenplays written or co-written, a couple made. And near the end of the book he stops giving advice entirely and describes what the work actually is. A deep-sea dive. You go down into the dark alone, and doubt comes at you like the bends and shows you monsters that are not there. What keeps you alive is not talent. It is somebody up on the dock holding the oxygen line who you have to believe is still standing there. Then he offers to be that person, for a stranger, in a book. Therefore, the board. Cork. 3 strips of masking tape making 4 rows. 40 index cards. 9 or 10 to a row, no more. And each card is one scene, written in a flat declarative sentence. Where it happens, what happens. And at the bottom of every single card, 2 marks. The first is a pair of arrows pointing at each other. That's the conflict. Who wants what, and who is standing in the way. 1 per card only. If it's more than 1 person or issue, you've got a muddy conflict. And your scene is probably muddy too. The second mark is a plus, and a minus. And the plus and minus is the entire book. Here is the test. It takes about 10 seconds a scene. Where does this scene start, emotionally? Where does it end? A lawyer wins a big case, plus. His wife walks in and asks for a divorce, minus. That is a scene. Believe it or not, an emotional change like this must occur in every scene. And if you don't have it, you don't know what the scene is about. And if you can't figure it out, throw the card away. 40 cards. 40 pluses and minuses. Do the whole wall and the holes light up by themselves? The stretch where nothing changes. The cards that are not scenes at all but backstory in a costume. And then, having spent an entire book building this apparatus, Snyder walks up and kicks it over. Truth is, when you write fade in, the board means nothing. He throws it out. He says his best characters are usually ones that were never on it. He says he deliberately starts writing before the board is finished. Like a jello mold that's not quite set, you want to start before it hardens. So what was any of it for? This. The board is not a plan. It is an instrument. You don't obey it. You hold your story against it and find out where the story is lying to you. The map is disposable. The measurement is not. He published all of this in a paperback, in a voice that sounded like a guy talking to you in a parking lot. A producer read it and asked UCLA to make it required reading. Writers he'd taught years earlier turned up still carrying the one-page form, folded, in a bag. He was still working when he died, in 2009. The third book came out that autumn with a line on the copyright page that reads, Estate of Blake Snyder. He'd written the answer to his critics in it already. Every story, he said, is the caterpillar and the butterfly. You and I are standing on a train platform, and we get on that train, and we are not coming back. Other people stay on the platform. They talk about the trip. In truth, it's only talk. They've never actually been anywhere. And if you want to call that a formula, you're still on the train platform talking about it. One sheet of paper. 15 numbered lines, flush left, page numbers in parentheses beside them. Mostly blank. He would not let himself walk into a pitch meeting until every line was filled in, one sentence each, no more than 2. Because that was the point of the blanks. If I can't fill in the blank in 1 or 2 sentences, I don't have the beat yet. I am just guessing. I am treading water, about to drown. 15 lines, 1 page. Still fits on 1 sheet. One last thing, and it costs nothing. Cheda once told Snyder that all his characters talked the same. Snyder was insulted. So Cheda handed him a page of his own script and covered up the names above the dialogue. Snyder couldn't tell who was speaking. Every character in it had his voice. Go cover the names on the last thing you wrote,